Well, hello everyone. Glad to see you here. And it's been like an interesting few days after being on the Dave Smith Show. And I wanted to thank everyone. I gained some patrons, and that is just so encouraging. So if you're listening, and I still need to put together an end screen thanking everyone who has become a patron. I haven't had time to get into Photoshop to do that yet, but probably for the next show. But if you would like to support this work, it will allow me to do more of it, because right now it's catch as catch can between my job and everything else. A lot of times I'm recording at 2 in the morning because it's sleep or get a video out. So I get a video out. So down there somewhere, I have my patron link, and you can become a patron and make me really, really happy. So that was enough for that. Enough of the advertisements. Let's get on with our subject. And I see you, Julian. Hello. It's always glad to see you. You're doing really good at being the first now. Okay, everyone. So what we are covering today is RCV. If you don't know what that is, I'm assuming most people watching this do, but it's a method of alternative voting, and it's a much needed voting reform. So it is ranked choice voting. In single winner races, it's also known as IRV, which is instant runoff voting. That's what happens in a single winner race. In a multi-winner race, it's called STV, which is single transferable vote. Those all fall under RCV, so don't get confused with the different terminology. It all depends upon whether it's a single winner or a multiple winner race. And that right there, that confused me for the longest time. I'm like, what's the difference between IRV and RCV and STV? This sounds like diseases for one thing. So what ranked choice voting is, like, say there are 5 candidates on the ballot in a single winner race. And there, you have your favorite, and you also have the one you think has the best chance of winning, and you have one that you definitely do not want to win. And of course, you're worried if you vote for your favorite, who might not have the best chance of winning, you might split the vote, right? The whole wasted vote spoiler effect. If you could rank them, you have nothing to lose by ranking your favorite first, and so on, and choosing to rank that person you don't like not at all, or last. Tactically, you have to decide that. And this way, you don't have to just settle on one. You can rank them in order of preference, because most of us have a preference. If our favorite can't be, we would rather this person rather than that person. So it's a alternative to the first past the post plurality system. Now, there's a lot of advantages to this that we'll get into. But what I wanted to go over today is a hearing that we had in Colorado about ranked choice voting. I am a activist with RCV Colorado. I guess I'm on their policy review committee, which is good because there's been some things that I'm glad I was there to argue against, and maybe we'll get into that at the end of this thing. And if there's a weird delay with my video, because that's what I'm seeing on my screen, sorry, it's just the internet, the interwebs, it's the NSA trying to silence me. I don't know. Hopefully it's not too annoying if that is happening. So what I'm going to do is play some of the hearing. Unfortunately, I don't have the video of the hearing. I have the audio, but I've got like a screen in the back. So we're going to go through this and talk about it a little. So the first clip is the bill's sponsors. So the way it works in Colorado is you have to go through multiple committee hearings. This is the first hearing. And in the first, it can get killed in the first hearing. It did not. It passed out of this hearing with some amendments. And the amendments were about the time frame for implementation, which, you know, there's no problem with that. Okay, so we're going to listen to the bill's sponsors talk about what this bill accomplishes. And I want you to hear it from them first, because this isn't the bill that authorizes RCV in Colorado. We did that 6 years ago. This is something a little bit different, and that makes it pretty important. But they do talk about the advantages of RCV and all of that. So let's go to that. I'm probably going to have to bump up the volume a little bit.
Okay, next will be the first hearing of House Bill 1071, ranked choice voting in nonpartisan elections. Representatives Arndt and Chairman Kennedy, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. First of all, I will just announce that Mr. Dudley is going to be distributing 3 amendments to you, but we will wait until the amendment phase to really get into those because they are not really undermining the substance of the bill. So we're excited to bring forward this bill today to talk to you guys about ranked choice voting in Colorado. If you're not familiar with this voting method, it is exactly what it sounds like. You have multiple candidates on the ballot, you rank them in order of your preference. Here's my first choice, here's my second choice, here's my third choice. And if no one gets 50% of the vote on the first round, then the person who gets the fewest votes is dropped off, and then their second choice votes are reallocated to someone else until they get to 50%. This is a voting method that's been much discussed by a number of groups exploring different kinds of alternative voting methods across the country. And I'll tell you why this piqued my interest. In my suburb of Lakewood, it is pretty easy to get on the ballot for city council. You need 25 signatures to get on the ballot. And so it's pretty common that we have 3 or 4 or more candidates running. And in those scenarios, it's very common that the person who wins has 30-something or 40-something% of the vote, but rarely do they get a majority of the vote. So I've seen this as a solution for a long time for the cities to help them explore this option. Now, I want to be clear that this is already something that cities have the authority to do in Colorado. It's within their existing statutory authority for both home rule and statutory cities. But here's the problem. It's not possible for the county clerks to help them. That's where the barrier is in state law. County clerks are bound to only use standard plurality voting. So what we're trying to do with this bill is make it more possible for cities to use the right that they already have by having the Secretary of State promulgate rules, designate software, test software, come up with new audit processes to make sure that cities are actually fully empowered to use this authority that they already have.
Hey, I just realized no sound. Thank you, Bradley, said no sound. None of you else said that, so let me start over. And I will edit this out in the final mix. I am so sorry. I know, I'm back. I'm so sorry. I had to unmute during that. Let me start over. I put it on pause because it might not have been clear. You know, I know what's going on, and, you know, there's some background I have. So what's going on here is this bill does not authorize ranked choice voting. That's already in statute from 6 years ago. And in statute 6 years ago, any municipality could choose to amend their charter to allow ranked choice voting and be perfectly compatible with Colorado law. But what the problem was is a lot of these municipalities don't run their own elections. They have coordinated elections through the county clerks of the counties where the municipality is, and those county clerks are not set up to do RCV. They don't have the software, they don't have the protocol. So all this bill does is authorize the counties to assist the municipalities the way they're supposed to, for the municipalities that on their own have voluntarily chosen to use RCV. There's like no mandates that anybody has to use RCV. But since the state said you can, and the voters there, got a little droopy spike, and the voters there have chosen to use it, it's kind of a hollow right if in practicality they can't do it because the counties aren't prepared. So this is directing the county clerks to be prepared in case any municipalities in their boundaries choose to use RCV. For instance, Boulder has passed RCV. They have coordinated elections with the county. They really, now the voters have put it into place. It's kind of screwed the town council because it's like, okay, we've been told to do this, but we can't really do it because the county's not set up to do it. So this is to solve that particular problem. So I hope that that made it clear. So we'll continue with the testimony, but I wanted to give you that background after you heard from the bill sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I started running for office in 2014, and someone came up to me and thumped me on the chest and said, rank choice voting. His name was Ken Tharp, and I want to give him all the kudos. I was new. I had just quit my job to run for office, and I had to look it up. I've always felt like it was a really great idea, and sometimes ideas come sooner and sometimes they come later. So the League of Women Voters, of which I am a member, is in big support of ranked choice voting. And I am too, and here's why I like it. I am always a fan of hearing every single voice. And in a race where is not just multiple, but the key is more than two, right? So 3 or more, right? The person who eventually wins comes in with 50% or 0.1, at least, percent of the will of the people, okay? It also adds to civility. So I've listened to a lot of podcasts where the cities that have opted in do it. Maine also has ranked choice voting. And I have a friend who's a legislator there too. It adds to civility because the candidates they tend to it's not binary. It's not either or, right? And then also when you're talking to the constituents, right? If you're not their first choice, shoot, you might be their second, right? You're going to hang in there, talk to them, hear what they want to say. If someone says, "I'm not voting for you," right? So now we tend to say, "Okay," and then we move on. When someone said, "I might vote for you," or "You could be my second," "Oh, tell me more. What do you care about?" So I think it gives the constituents a bigger voice. It allows each person to come in with 50% or more of the people behind them, and it lends us civility between the candidates themselves.
Chairman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing I will also add is that for cities that currently use a runoff election, this has the possibility of saving them money, because doing instant runoff through ranked choice voting is just one ballot, saving them the entire cost of the second election. So I don't know how many jurisdictions do that in Colorado, but there's certainly some, and this is a money saver for them if they chose to use this method.
Representative.
Okay, I put it on pause again. The second bill sponsor really just got into the benefits of RCV, and I'm not really so sure why she did that, because this isn't really about RCV. It's about making sure the municipalities that have chosen it are equipped to actually do it. We already passed RCV. So it's interesting the way it keeps having to be defended. But those are obviously benefits to RCV. Now, in the comments, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, though I prefer YouTube because it gives me view hours, but if you have any questions about RCV or any comments, you know how I like doing my live streams to be interactive. Please feel free to put them in the chat so that I can see them. So let's finish out this segment here. It's just got, I think, less than a minute on it.
And my final point is I really feel like this is the Colorado way. It's not mandated. It's 100% optional. We're setting up a framework, as Representative Kennedy said, to make this a stronger possibility. And ranked choice voting can be opted in by municipalities either by a vote of the city council or by a vote of the people, whatever they choose. This further strengthens what we humbly think is one of the best voting systems in the United States of America, and just as another option.
Okay, so that's it from the sponsors. Okay, yeah, that's it from the sponsors, and we're going to go then to what I'm going to be critiquing in a moment. But as you heard her say, that the municipalities could end up using ranked choice voting either through a referendum of their voters or by action of their town or city council. I went to Castle Rock, where I live, their town council, to ask them to sponsor it to be on the next ballot for us to be able to use ranked choice voting in only one race. RCV Colorado has strategized, and I agree with them, that it's good to do it as a test case to prove to people it's not scary. So you pick one race. In Boulder, we're using ranked choice in the mayor's race only. So that's what we proposed in Castle Rock. The town council wouldn't even give anyone time to do a presentation on RCV. They just decided, without even hearing from anybody, that they didn't like it. Okay, and I wrote them immediately afterwards to say whether or not you liked it isn't the issue. The issue is whether or not the voters will like it, and they deserve to have that choice. So I let them know what I thought about their particular opinion. And I also said, here's the thing. We used to have an appointed mayor. The town council would appoint the mayor. And my husband and I thought that was really shitty. So my husband asked the town council to sponsor it on the ballot, and they said no. So this became my husband's project, not mine. I can't take any credit for it. He then ran a petition drive in Castle Rock, and we won. It got on the ballot. The voters voted for it. So we got a lot of experience now with petitioning in Castle Rock, and now we elect our mayor. So I also wrote in my email to town council is, if you guys don't put it on the ballot, we're just going to petition, and you already know we can do it because my husband already just did that. But it's different now. Now it's Pandemicville. How do you think you're going to look to the voters when they're asking us, why are you out here trying to collect petitions in the middle of a pandemic, when we say it's because the town council couldn't even be bothered to hear a presentation? Yeah, that's going to look really good. So I'm going to bring this point up again at the next town council meeting, which I think is in 2 weeks. There was one tonight, but I actually had an LNC thing I needed to do, a convention voting process committee thing to do. So yeah, I'll probably be petitioning with my husband and RCV Colorado to get it on the ballot in Castle Rock. And there is some great comments here that I do want to put up. So Free Utah says there's a similar bill in Utah. You can let me know if that's statewide and the progress of it, because I didn't know there was one in Utah. It's different organizations that have been helping. And the one I'm working with is pretty much just in Colorado, but there's a more national organization called Rank the Vote that might be involved there. And here, most county clerks have expressed opposition. Now, what's interesting, my husband and I met with the Douglas County, where we live, clerk, and he was at first opposed over email. Then when we spoke to him, I think he's moved to neutral, which is a progress. And he definitely said we can accommodate whatever we end up having to do. Interestingly enough, the Secretary of State testified at this bill, and they weren't opposed. They weren't opposed. Only thing they had criticism on was the time frame. They said the bill's time frame was too short, and that's what those amendments end up being, to lengthen the time frame, because that was reasonable. But yeah, the Secretary of State's office, surprisingly, was not opposed. And in California, yeah, generally what happens is localities implement it, and people like it. It's in Basalt here. And a study was done of the voters in Basalt after their first use of it, and they loved it. They weren't confused, and they loved it. Denver County, or no, it's not Denver County, but Denver County and the city of Denver are one and the same, basically, but there's different government structures. But Denver is considering it. But they're considering multiple different alternative voting. They're also considering approval voting, which I hope they pick RCV, if they pick anything at all. And there's multiple activist groups springing up, but Boulder was a big win, because Boulder, everyone's heard of that. I mean, it's very progressive, but that's good. I mean, because Colorado is moving to be little California, basically, So, yeah, it's interesting. So I've become convinced that the LP is spinning its wheels until we get two things. And most of us should be spending time not just with party activism, but with this activism. We need voting reform. And I'm convinced that RCV is the answer, but there are other methods. I can tell people why I don't support the other methods. And I also think this is a one-shot thing. The reason why I used to, in theory, any alternative method is better than what we have now, in theory. But in practice, I think this is a one-shot deal. If a municipality picks the wrong one, and we're going to see this in a minute, and it goes over like a Led Zeppelin, we won't get another chance. So while I think approval voting is better than what we do now, I don't think it's going to work. And I think if Denver picks approval voting, it's going to kill our chances to get RCV once approval voting doesn't work. And I can tell you, if anyone's interested, why I have come out in favor of RCV instead of approval voting, considering Colorado's kind of the hot spot for approval voting. My dear friends are the motivators behind the approval voting party, which is an actual party in Colorado. They've got a lot of ties to the Libertarian Party. But I just don't support it. So for Utahns here is telling us in Utah County, so Amelia Powers Gardner, that sounds like a superhero name. He says she implemented RCV in 2 elections. Good, very positively received. Yeah, big fan of RCV. I'm glad to hear that. So, so that's where we are at here in Colorado. But what I want to go to next, and I'm going to need to share my screen because my clip didn't come out right. The clerk of El Paso County, which is a big county in Colorado, is one of the people that testified against this bill. Actually, most of the testimony was positive. If I had to go through my head, it was probably 5-1. For every 5 positive, there was 1 negative. So that's really good. So let's hear the twaddle, the unmitigated twaddle that the El Paso County clerk tried to feed us. But I'm going to need to share it from the YouTube video. Because damn it, my clip didn't go. So I got to share my screen. Now let me pull up the tube of the use. Let's put that on full screen. Okay, so this should be the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are there any questions for Mayor Weaver? Seeing none, thank you so much. All right, next up we'll call Chuck Browerman. Mr. Browerman, are you available?
Can you hear me? This is Chuck Browerman.
Hi, Mr. Browerman. The floor is yours. 3 minutes.
All right.
Please introduce yourself and state who you represent for the record.
Sure. Vice Chair Woodrow, Chairman Kennedy, and members of the State Civic, Veterans, and Military Affairs Committee. My name is Chuck Browerman. I am the El Paso County Clerk and Recorder. I oppose this bill as a matter of public policy. Ranked choice voting, also known as instant runoff voting, is an electoral system that adds more confusion to the voting process while failing to ensure that every vote counts. As a guide, voting should be easy, clear-cut, and accessible as possible and allow the greatest swath of voter participation as possible. House Bill 1071, ranked choice voting in nonpartisan elections, fails to meet that test. The proponents of 1071 make some lofty claims regarding the benefits of ranked choice voting, that it increases the likelihood that the winner will have a majority of the votes cast, that it will decrease negative campaigning, and that it will increase voter turnout. With respect to ensuring a candidate wins a majority, a recent study from the Maine Heritage Group surveyed 96 ranked choice voting elections from around the country and found that only in 38% of the elections did the winning candidate have a majority. To the point.
Okay, I'm stopping here for 1 second just to let you know I'm going to be addressing these arguments that he's making. So if you're wondering, oh, what's that all about? Yeah, but we'll let him continue. I think the one thing I didn't have something queued up for that just infuriates me is when these elected officials act like they're so much smarter than the average person. Oh, this is going to confuse them. Really? People seem to know how to rate things on Amazon. People seem to know how to choose restaurants based upon reviews. But no, it's just too confusing for them to rank their choices of candidates. How arrogant do you have to be, or how much better do you think you have to be than other people to think that the average person can't understand that concept? Holy cow.
Point that ranked choice voting presents a solution to nasty or negative campaigns. While candidates under ranked choice voting may temper their rhetoric in hopes of being some voters' number two choice, it still leaves the door wide open for third-party organizations to fill that negative messaging gap. And
wait, I want to stop there again, because again, notice the ultimate ulterior motive came through. It leaves the door open for third parties. Now, he says to fill that negative messaging gap, but it's the third party issue. That is what they fear. Even though this particular bill that he's allegedly testifying against isn't about allowing RCV. It's already been allowed. And notice the nonpartisan election. So why is he all of a sudden bringing up third parties? Huh. Interesting.
And get away with it. For example, in Maine's 2018 gubernatorial primary and in the 2020 U.S. Senate race where ranked choice voting was used, there was a clear increase in the number of third-party groups, the amount of money spent, and on...
Oh, how dare they be an increase of third-party groups? That's a bad thing? How? Oh my word, this guy. I was burning up mad while I was listening to him. I was frothing.
The divisive rhetoric that existed between the groups, and it was unchecked. On the statement of increasing voter turnout, Colorado enjoys some of the highest voter turnout in the country. However, under ranked choice voting, overall voter turnout has not increased. In fact, it has decreased. In a study by Cato, they examined voter turnout in 5 San Francisco elections from 1995 to 2011, and they found it exacerbated the differences in voter turnout between those that were likely to vote and those who may not, which included younger and those voters with lower educational attainment.
Okay, I do want to stop here again, because I forgot he brought up San Francisco. Remember how I said, okay, there are different methods of RCV that have been tried over the years. The major organizations have settled on a certain method, and that's what's being proposed. There is, however, a method called San Francisco RCV, and it has flaws. So he's bringing up an RCV method that is not the method that is being talked about here. Just so you know, he's muddying the waters. And Colorado has great voter turnout because we have mail-in ballots. Voters don't even really need to turn out anywhere. We've had mail-in ballots for years. So we've got it down pat. I know people were panicking about mail-in ballots, for the presidential election. That's for places that never did it before. Colorado's been doing that forever. There is a lot of trust here. The clerks have it down. There's no issue with our mail-in ballots, but that's the biggest reason we have big voter turnout.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Vice Chair, while states and localities have used ranked choice voting, the findings all show that one thing: voters feel that at the end of the day, their vote doesn't count. Research.
Tell the truth, Pinocchio. This is the stuff I'm going to concentrate on in my little refutation, but
research has shown that ranked choice voting increases the prevalence of spoiled or exhausted votes. Understanding the differences in policy between candidates to the point where a voter can meaningfully rank all candidates in order of preference requires a great deal of political savvy and engagement. However, a number of jurisdictions have implemented and tested ranked choice voting, but have since repealed the complicated system. For example, Burlington, Vermont, They adopted it in 2005 and repealed it in 2010. Other jurisdictions that tested and repealed ranked choice voting include state of North Carolina, Pierce County, Washington, Ann Arbor, Michigan. A similar response was seen in Aspen, Colorado. The city used ranked choice voting for the first time in 2009, but was quickly rejected by voters in 2010 by 65%. It's clear that voters overwhelmingly prefer their traditional voting system of one person, one vote over the convoluted rank.
Okay, do have to stop right there. What I'm going to be addressing is his assertions regarding Aspen, Colorado. I don't like commenting on other states. I'm not familiar with the political climate of other things that were going on. We all know that things don't happen in a vacuum. So I decided I just want to address Aspen. Excuse me, drank that soda too fast, because I know about that. And the fact is, he's not telling the truth about Aspen. He's telling a partial truth about Aspen. And a partial truth means there's a partial not truth. He gave part of the story. So we will go over that. And the fact that he did that with Aspen really makes me doubt his examples of those other cities. But I didn't research into those other cities because, again, I can't possibly quickly get up to speed on whatever politics are going on in states that I'm unfamiliar with.
Choice voting system. Before we make big changes, I hope this committee will consider these points and the shortcoming of ranked choice voting. In closing, there's no need to complicate the straightforward voting process we currently employ by adopting ranked choice voting. As clerks, we already field hundreds of questions from voters during election conducting the traditional voting method. It is reasonable to assume that voters will have even more questions if we change the way to vote. Voting should be as simple and easy as possible for voters and election administrators. Each citizen should have one vote and every vote should count. But with a system like ranked choice voting, voters could lose their say. I thank you and entertain any questions the committee may have.
Okay, so there were no questions. So that is it for him. So let's go back to a full screen here. If I can do that, here we go. Whew! That was a lot. That was a load of patookie. Boy. So yeah, let me put up, I see some comments here. And I see both Free Utahns and Jonathan Jacobs had pretty much the same comment. So I'm just going to put up this one. He was referring to that in Vermont political action groups, but he was not referring to that in his first reference. In his first reference, he was referring to third parties in general. That requires some knowledge of Colorado to make that really clear, but Colorado has really easy ballot access laws. A lot of third parties get their start here. So it's always very much on the political discussion. But yes, in Vermont, he was speaking of political, one issue political action groups. But who cares? Great. I'm glad those were involved. He was basically speaking of anything other than the duopoly. They're threatened by it. So it's crazy. Interesting. So yeah, I don't know if he mentioned the margin that it was repealed by, but I didn't know enough about that to comment on it. But I did jot some notes and some things that I wanted to cover. That it's been a week or so since I listened to this. Now I'm just getting all mad again. So his thing. His thing about spoiled ballots, or exhausted ballots, which is really, I think, spoiled or exhausted. Okay, say you have 5 candidates, but you choose to only rank 2 of them. If the rounds of RCV, or instant runoff, go beyond 2 rounds, then your ballot is exhausted because you chose not to rank anyone else. So you're out of it at that point. How is that any more objectionable, and it's the voter's choice, than in a plurality where you only get one shot at it? And if that's it, and you're out of the running. And the wasted vote syndrome with plurality is any votes in excess of what any candidate needed to win are wasted. Most people don't consider that. So say, they won by whatever I'm not good with math, okay? So I'll just tell you that right now. But the fact is, if they could have won without whatever the margin was, those votes were wasted that somebody, if they had wanted to, could have put on a third candidate and not affected the outcome in any way. That other candidate would have still won. So for him to be concerned about spoiled ballots, about choices on a ballot not mattering, that is worse than plurality. In RCV, at least you have the opportunity to give a preference and have a say in a second round. What RCV does is reach a consensus candidate. And when he had said, this requires voters to be more educated on all of the issues, as if that's a bad thing. I nearly swallowed my tongue. So you just want them basically to vote R or D and not really know about. I get it. Okay, I hear you. Didn't our founders think we needed an educated electorate? If this gets people more interested in politics, because now they realize, oh my goodness. Because let me tell you, people love being asked to rate things. That's why systems like the Amazon rating system is so powerful. They've got this huge selling tool where people feel comfortable buying products, and they don't even have to pay these people to do this marketing for Amazon, because people love being asked their opinion. And they will get educated. They love ranking things. People understand it. 1 star, 5 stars, they understand it. So, also, where he said, each one person, one vote. Yeah, well, ranked choice has already been ruled by the Supreme Court that it doesn't violate the 1 person, 1 vote. It doesn't violate any of that. It's still 1 vote that ends up in the final round. That's the vote. That is your 1 vote. It's just a matter of getting there. So, yeah, those were just ridiculous. But notice the one thing that he didn't address. He didn't address what this bill is even about. This bill isn't about whether or not ranked choice voting is good or bad and whether people should be allowed to use it in Colorado. That's already been determined 6 years ago. He came and ranted about everything but what the bill is about. The bill is about enabling municipalities to be able to follow the will of the voters. And the El Paso County clerk came and spoke against that. I wish I was in El Paso to run against that dude out of principle. Clerk is actually something that I would be somewhat qualified to do with my legal background. But anyway. Okay, so if Free Utahns is in chat is giving a lot of excerpts that I'm going to stick up here on the screen. Again, I'm ignorant about Burlington, Vermont, but I do want to put these up here for everyone's review. And there was an article that he was taking a look at. So, in 2004, it looks like they did it for mayor for 2006, 2009. And I guess it turned out that mayor was a rascal, as many politicians are. So then they blamed ranked choice. I get it. Nobody gets in without sufficient support from the public. That's what's funny, that it's a consensus candidate. If you have buyer's remorse, that's okay. I have buyer's remorse about a lot of things in politics, but it's not the fault of an alternative voting system. Okay, interesting. And I would be interested also on what kind of ranked choice voting that they used, because there's a certain way to do the runoff. The first step in every ranked choice is the same. Maybe we'll go, and let me make a note of this. Maybe we'll go over that when I'm done with the testimony here. So what I would like to play next is, first, I want to play my response, because I was there. I gave testimony as well. My response to the El Paso clerk. And then there's a couple articles I want to show you that he referred to. And one of those articles, he referred to a heritage study, and he referred to, again, what happened in Aspen. And those are going to be an article I refer to, and we'll go over that. So let me play, if I can. Let me go up here and find the file for my response. I think this is it.
We'd like to next call up Kieran Harlos, who's appearing remotely.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, Ms. Harlos. Please state your name and who you represent for the record.
Okay, certainly. My name is Karen Ann Harlos. I'm not here representing anyone, but as a side note, I am the National Secretary for the Libertarian Party. And I am here speaking in favor, and I have to say that I'm a little bit alarmed at some of the comments, and I'm not going to go over the common items in support. What I want to go over is some of the things that had been said. Some people are arguing against as if this proposal will decide whether it can be used or not, and that is not what's on the table. What's on the table is whether the state of Colorado is going to assist voters in what they've already decided on the local level that they want. The purpose of the state of Colorado should not be a stumbling block. It should be setting up the lower governments for success. All that will happen if this doesn't go through is that you are hobbling the activists and the voters who have already made a decision. And it should be their decision to make, and they should expect Colorado to facilitate that for them. I'm also concerned about some of the comments that were made about Aspen, because I do think there's some muddying of the waters here. I really encourage people to read Ballot Access News and the Aspen Daily news from February 19th, 2009, where it is dealing with a multi-winner race, not a single winner race, and they decided to use a disfavored and obscure method of counting, not the one that is recommended by the major RCV organizations. So I do believe that was somewhat of a red herring. And last thing here, I'm probably going to be involved in petitioning with Castle Rock, so yet another municipality may come on board, and we want the support of the state of Colorado. I don't believe it's the job of legislatures to kill things into committee, but to let the voters decide what they would like to do with their votes. Thank you. Okay, so let me go back to a full screen if I can. Yep, here we go. And I did write also afterwards saying you guys really should turn your mics off during testimony because that was very distracting. And that comment of, after I mentioned Castle Rock, where one of them prodded another one and said, "Oh, you hear that?" So apparently I caused a stir with that, but that crosstalk was very rude and very distracting. But yeah, so that's what I had said in public testimony. So now let's get to some of the specifics that I have some documentation for with the El Paso County clerk. So let me find it here. All right, so let me get the documents up. The first one is, we're going to deal with Aspen. Okay, I need to also pull it up down on my screen here so that I can actually see it myself. Alrighty. So the Aspen City Council, after they decided to use RCV, now notice they called it in this first sentence instant runoff. It wasn't instant runoff because this was a multi-winner race. Instant runoff is only a term that's used for single winner races. It would be single transferable vote, but just saying there's inaccuracies in this article at the top. So they had to choose, and the one with multi-winner races is more complicated. Not for the voters, but it is more complicated in the calculations. So they were choosing between two different methods of going through the subsequent rounds. And they decided to use a highly disfavored method rather than the one that is recommended. So you can see here the sequential elimination. That is what is recommended. But what they decided to do was different. Oh, wrong thing. Right here. Next page of my PDF. So what they actually decided to do was this 2-vote batch elimination that confused everybody, and they did not have confidence in the results. So check out how complicated this was. Under this method, which uses an identical ballot as the other method, voters' first and second choices are counted, given equal weight, why equal weight, and assigned to the candidates. It's like crazy, weird calculations. It's not straightforward. So that is why RCV failed in Aspen. Not because people were dissatisfied with RCV in general. They were dissatisfied with the decision the town council made as to how they were going to calculate it. And this is one reason why we recommend doing a single winner race first, get people used to it before moving on to multi-winner. So strategically, everything was just wrong in Aspen. So all he said was it was repealed. He didn't give any of this backstory. So do you think that gave a clear picture by just saying it was repealed? I don't. I think there were some other facts at play here that he did not tell us. I wonder why. Okay, but the more interesting thing here is the heritage study. So let me pull it up. And I can get you guys links to all of these if you're interested. So the heritage study says ranked choice voting is a bad choice. Okay, first of all, there are numerous studies out. There are numerous studies out from political science experts that all are overwhelmingly in favor of ranked choice. And the League of Women Voters just came out in favor of ranked choice. There are some special interest groups that are interested in upholding the duopoly that put out crap like this. So this is this is just like hogwash in the beginning here. He says, it's really a scheme to disconnect elections from issues. How? Didn't El Paso clerk just say they had to learn too much about all of the issues? You can't have it both ways. This isn't Schrodinger's ballot, depending upon what argument you want to make. And allow candidates with marginal support to win elections. That is actually impossible. It is impossible. That is just an outright falsehood, and we're going to get into that in something else later down in this article. In the end, it's all about political power. Oh, dear, tell me how all of a sudden the duopoly is concerned. Of course, it's about who gets political power and whether the voters are going to have to be forced between always the lesser of two evils, or whether there'll be a more fair system. And we wouldn't even have come to this point if both the Democrats and the Republicans didn't try to bend over and screw anyone else with ballot access. I should cry no tears for these people. Tell me it's about political power. It's like, hello, pot. Kettle says you're black. All right, so this last sentence here. It also disenfranchises voters. How in the world does it do that? They get to vote. They, in fact, get to rank their choices. Because ballots that do not include the two ultimate finalists are cast aside to manufacture a faux majority for the winner. That is something that the El Paso County clerk said, where he said, in some elections, 30% of the elections using ranked choice, the person who was a majority, or no, he said the person who had the most votes isn't the person who won. He used majority and most votes interchangeably, if I remember correctly. Yet, the system they're advocating doesn't require a majority at all, faux or otherwise. And the system they're advocating, people could get elected with 33% of the vote. This is kind of like when statists are arguing against libertarianism, pointing out flaws like, yeah, but, crime will be amok or something like that. Crime's amok now. They put criticisms that are already here now. So obviously your system isn't fixing it. At least this one comes up with a majority. It's a consensus majority, though. That is where they are doing a sleight of hand. It's not a faux majority. And ballots that do not include the two ultimate finalists are only cast aside if the voters chose not to rank them. And in choosing not to rank, they have made a choice. Let's channel Rush here. When you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. They have clearly stated that the two finalists they think are so sucky that they couldn't even bring themselves to rank them. That is a message. That is a choice. No, they want to force you to pick between the turd sandwich and the douche canoe. So let me go down here a bit and I want to let you guys keep up. I'm trying to find, yeah, it's that one there where it says if none of the voters are chosen as round one. So let's continue here. So when they say that the person with the most votes isn't the one who wins, what they're referring to is the person with the most round one votes isn't always the one that wins if they don't get a majority in round one. Hello, Captain Obvious. Of course, that is what ranked choice voting is about. What you're basically saying when you say that is it's not plurality. No shit, Sherlock. Of course it's not plurality. It's something different. So, if none of the candidates were chosen as the number one pick by a majority of voters in round one, we go on to another round. Unlike your shitty system, where someone could get elected with 33% of the vote, and we don't even know how the other 70% felt about that candidate at all. All we know is they didn't vote for them. So it says then the scores would be recalculated over and over until one of the candidates finally won a majority as the second, third, or even fourth choice of voters. Very rarely does it get down that far, but it can. And it shows a consensus of that. If it gets that far, it means that there were polarizing candidates that got a lot of round one votes, and those people then didn't rank other people. That can happen with polarizing candidates. Like I bet you if we had ranked choice in this past election, a lot of Trump people would not have ranked anyone else. And that's their choice. So if whoever didn't get a majority on the first round. Now, with the presidential election's not a good example since we do require, in fact, a majority of electoral college votes, but I'm just giving like an example of a mindset rather than an actual process. So it says in the end, a voter's ballot might wind up being cast for a candidate he ranked below his first choice. Of course, because this is ranked choice. All you're saying once again is, boo, this isn't plurality. Hello, Captain Obvious. It says, a candidate whom he may have strong political objections and for whom he would not vote in a traditional voting system. If he has strong objections, he could have not ranked them. He obviously didn't have that strong if he ranked them high enough for them to get in. He gave his preference. Consensus candidates are always better than polarizing candidates that squeak in with 30% of the vote. That's crazy. So basically, this whole screed boils down to, it's not plurality. We knew that before we read that. So right here, California Governor Jerry Brown. This is obviously a conservative publication here. So you know they're seeking to entrench the Republicans. But we do not often agree with former Governor Brown. But he vetoed a bill saying it was overly complicated and confusing. People here in... there's something else I do want to mention. No, it's not. And deprives voters of genuinely informed choice? How? That's a nice assertion you have there. Would suck if somebody dismantled it. How? No proof. All that is an assertion. It's an ipsa dixit. How does it deprive them of genuinely informed choice? And I thought Mr. El Paso said they were going to have to be too informed. Which is it? Oh, boy. Yeah. The attitude, the patronizing, paternalistic attitude of politicians really does burn my biscuits sometimes. So, yeah. The duopoly is threatened. So that right there should be a point in its favor. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was the El Paso County clerk said that everywhere it had been used in Colorado, the voters indicated that they felt like their vote didn't count. Really? Well, it was just used in Basalt. Oh, and I should see if I can find that study. I should have pulled that up. And there was a professional group that did a study on it, and the Basalt voters... Basalt study RCV. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull that up quickly. Okay. Yep. Right here. Let me let you guys see this if I can. Nope, that isn't working. Why? Yeah, here we go. Let me hide all these things. What am I not hiding? Right there. Okay. So, Basalt voters have a higher satisfaction with ranked choice voting. Really? That's not what he was telling us, was it? That's why I said tell the truth, Pinocchio. So, let's look at some of the figures. They get through on how there was voter education, which is necessary. They had a brochure and a video. And only 3 ballots were exhausted, as we had talked about. And here's the chart. Voters who ranked more than 1, 73%, 1, 23%, and the don't recall. Easy to use. This is what the people said. 55.1% said very easy. 39.5% said fairly easy. That little slice there said neutral. Look at the tiny slice, fairly hard. And the satisfaction. 45.4, very satisfied. 42.2, satisfied. A bunch of neutrals. And look at that tiny slice of dissatisfied. Now, would you have gotten that impression from the El Paso County clerk? And look at the support for future use. Now, Basalt is a small city, okay? So a small sample size, but they actually used it, and they had high voter satisfaction. And it's because the education was put in place first. You do have to educate voters. It is something new. Okay, I need to hide all these so I can see if there's any comments, because let's see here. Free Utahns asked if the town council purposely sabotaged. That I don't know. I have no info on that. Judging from that article, they had some kind of weird plurality system that they were trying to mirror, so it did seem like good faith, like they were trying to keep something familiar with some weird process that they had before. So I tend to think it was good faith, and it just didn't work. So I also wanted to show you guys for future research, if you're interested. We're not going to go over a lot of it here, but let me just pull this up. If you're not familiar with a site called OpaVote, it is fantastic, and we use it on the LNC quite a bit. Let me pull up that screen. So this is OpaVote. And it's not free. It's free for small elections, so like your local affiliate could use it. But what I like about it is even if you don't use OpaVote for your initial ballot, you could take your ballots and run them through OpaVote using different methods to see how results might be different. And that's really, really interesting. But they have a lot of methods, as you can see. But I wanted to go here. And they even have the Condorcet, which is really, really interesting but complicated. I'm going to go here under ranked choice. And I am trying, right here. I was talking to you before about San Francisco RCV. That is a special system, and that's why it did not work here. So it's the way candidates are eliminated, which is different. So, yeah, I'm not going to get into all the specifics of it. But there's also Oakland RCV. So there are, in fact, different methods. So instant runoff voting right here is what is now recommended, and it's the simplest. And that isn't what was used. But you can see all the different methods here. That can matter with your small group sometime on how you would like to use, particularly here with single transferable vote. Now, where I had said that it gets more complicated with multi-winner, which is single transferable vote, it does. And it talks here about, the methods of determining it. So you can take a look here if you're interested in all these different methods. And you'll see down here, there's also other methods. You got the Coombs method, the board account, which is terrible, and the Buckland system, which have been used in this country in the past. So there, you can go to OpaVote and learn more about all of these systems. And yeah, this is the guy who started this was involved with Fair Vote before. I just wanted to show you guys that if it's something you might be interested in. You know, I should log in. Did we do any RCVs? I'm not sure if we did. I think we did approval voting. Let me log in to see if I have any past elections here. Yeah, I don't think these were all, I think, approval voting, but I want to show you the type of data you could get. So let's go to maybe the audit committee appointments, because this is, you guys already know. Let's look at the results and ballots. So you can see the type of data that it gives you, and this was for approval. So it says the count of all approvals and what the winners are. But it gives you a lot of really, really great data. And you can recount using different systems. So I'm wondering though, because we did this approval is really strange, but let's just pick something out of here. Let's do Condorcet Borda, whatever the heck that is, and we'll see. See, that's complicated, right? And this one, we only came out with 2 rather than 3. Wasn't it 3 winners before? But it's same 2 that we got in the other one, at least of the 2. So let's... Nope, it's the same 2. So that actually is interesting. So it shows that that was probably a pretty good representation. Let's just try another for the heck of it, whatever Buckland system is. So you can see how you could play around with this. Oh, for some reason it doesn't want to recount during that. It probably is because there's some data set that isn't given with approval. Probably required some kind of ranking. So yeah, I just hope that you found that interesting. And you also can have non-anonymous ballots with this, and that's with the download ballots. And they put that into place for the LNC because we don't do anonymous voting. Alrighty. Let's go back to my full screen if I can. And let's pull up comments because otherwise I think we are almost done here. But Jonathan had a question. You know, that's a good... I have to honestly tell you, I don't know. I never paid attention because before I was a Libertarian, I didn't vote. I just didn't. I used to throw out my ballot. And then ever since I got involved in politics, it's been Libertarian. So I'm going to Google that. Does Colorado, I think we do, have write-in votes? Oh, it's complicated. It's not giving me a straightforward answer. I will find that out, and I will bring it up in another show, because now I'm curious if we do have write-in votes or not. So I'm just giving it a few moments, see if anyone else has any questions, but I hope this was a little bit educational for those of you who might have only known about RCV in passing. And there's been an objection that I've gotten from Libertarians on RCV, and they said that studies have shown, and I haven't seen any of these, that Libertarians aren't faring any better in RCV than in plurality. Okay, that I don't support RCV for partisan reasons. I don't support RCV because I think it's the silver bullet that will automatically make Libertarians popular. I think it provides a background in which we can win, but I'm not doing it because it will make us so that we will win, if you understand what I'm saying. I think it's better for the voters and better for our country. If it ends up being worse for Libertarians, so be it. But I don't believe it will be. But I'm not going to be like a Democrat and Republican and try to rig the system in a way that's going to cause us to win. No, I want a fair fight. And I think this is the fair way. Oh, I also promised that I would tell you guys why, for instance, why I ended up on the side of RCV instead of approval voting. If you don't know what approval voting is, say you have 5 candidates, like the RCV example we gave, where you would rank them, and you could choose not to rank some, or you could rank them all. With approval voting, you just put a check mark next to anyone you would be okay with. So there's no ranking, it's an undifferentiated check mark. You approve of them. So you could approve of one, you could approve of none. If you approve of all 5, it's like not voting at all, because it just zeroes itself out. But say you approve of 3 of them. And to me, there is 2 reasons why I don't favor it. A, it's an undifferentiated approval. Like, say, for instance, and and this was in fact true in the last race, and someone can hate me if they want to, because it was different in let's just use 2016, because people will hate me for a different reason, but at least it's far enough away that the emotions aren't too hot. When I was put on the spot and asked in the 2016 election, forget about the Libertarian candidate, if you had to choose between Trump or Hillary, who would you have chose? And I said Hillary. And the reason is she was a known factor, and I chose the devil I knew rather than the devil I didn't know. In 2020, if I had to pick between Trump and Biden, I would have picked Trump. Obviously, I think he sucks. But in the hypothetical, I think he sucked a little less. Like, being slightly less terrible is not an endorsement or an expression of support. But in the hypothetical, someone's got a gun to your head and you need to pick one or the other, I would slightly prefer Trump. And I don't want my brains blown out. But in 2016, it was Hillary. So on an approval voting ballot, I would just have had to have put in 2016 checkmark by Gary Johnson and Hillary as if I approved of both of them equally. I can't do that. Absolutely. I am not going to give an undifferentiated approval. That gives no information to the candidates, because voting also is a driver of the way the next crop of politicians are going to look, because that's all politicians respond to is the voting. And if you do not get good data that comes out of it, I mean, Hillary would come out of that thinking she had a supporter here. No, I just thought you sucked. I thought you were the devil. I know. Calling you a devil is not an improvement. So, but with ranked choice, there is granular data that comes out where the person who ends up winning could see how many first choice votes they had and how many second or third. And they can see where their messaging might have failed. And they can see where the consensus converged. You have valuable data with RCV that you do not have with approval. Also, approval voting is dead in the water once people figure out the bullet vote. Let me explain, and this is particularly true in small bodies. On the LNC, we still use a lot of approval voting, and I hate it. And this is why. If I want to be on, say, the platform committee, but I'm also on the LNC, so I'm also voting on other people for the platform committee because we get to appoint 5 people. If I put a check mark by everyone I approve of, including myself, I could have just voted myself out of a seat. So, with bullet voting, you just vote for one. And then you have diluted the votes of the others that you might have approved of. So on the LNC, every LNC member knows if you're voting on a committee that you also want to be on, don't vote for any of the candidates, just vote for yourself. I learned that from Alicia Matson. Bullet voting. And there was a study done on, I forgot where it was. I think it was Fargo. What state is that again? Oh my God. I remember that show. I mean, the movie. Crap. What state is that? Somebody tell me. Fargo. But it somewhere up there, there was an approval voting used, I believe, because there was an exit survey that came out. And 30% of the voters bullet voted because they figured it out on their own. No one told them to do it. They bullet voted. Another 10% did it because their candidate told them to. Yeah, I think it was North Dakota. And they were using approval voting at a Texas convention I was at, Texas LP, and I believe it was when Kathy Glass was one of the candidates for governor, and I don't blame her for doing this. This is not a criticism. She told her delegates, bullet vote. Because that is the way you win. The minute you figure out bullet voting, approval voting's dead in the water. So that is why I believe it was the League of Women Voters report that came out said approval voting is good for elections you need to complete quickly that are of less importance. You know, things that people are not very emotionally invested in that you just need to get over with. You know, that's why approval voting is great for things like where will we go to lunch with a group, you know, or, you know, inconsequential decisions. But they definitely did not recommend it for consequential decisions. And I do have some charts on that. I probably, you see, as I'm talking here, I'm like, blah, 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 but I don't know if anyone is actually interested in that. But that is why I am not in favor of approval voting. Now, star voting is another thing that people are pushing. And star voting, the reason why I don't favor that is because it is too complicated to understand. If the voters cannot, on their own, with stacks of paper, in theory, be able to reproduce the calculation method. In other words, you don't need a computer to do it, though having a computer will make it go faster. They're not going to trust it. And that is, in fact, the case with star voting. Okay, here, I want to show you this. I found the approval voting study. Okay, so right here. It was Fargo. God, I'm usually my memory sucks, but I'm kind of very passionate about this. So, approval voting case study, and there's I believe I need to get some of these windows out of the way. All right, 32.4% of one candidate voters gamed it. They voted strategically. So I said it was about 30%. Yep, right here. 29.7% did it strategically. 2.7 did it, I thought it was 10, but so I was off on that. Did it as a campaign tip. And the others only approved of one because they only liked one. So, yeah. They said they thought that voting for more than one candidate would hurt my favorite candidate, and it would. You could end up voting your favorite candidate out. And you do not do that with ranked choice. It does not right here as it says, the votes cast did not accurately register voter preferences. So, alrighty. And I don't know what this is that I have here. This is like their bullet point. I just want to see if there's anything interesting in here. Yeah, here we go. So here is what a study had shown as to voting methods. You know, so you start with the questions and you go through this voting chart here. And approval voting is AV, and you can see, do you need a consensus of the majority? No. Will the voters be doing a detailed review? No. Then approval voting. And that is the only case in which approval voting is successful. So, and here's a comparison here of plurality, approval, score, and score can be gamed really easy too because it's somewhat like approval, but it's to a subjective. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4. It's much more complicated, but that's how you game it, by purposely low scoring, and you can't effectively game ranked choice. So yeah, see if this passes muster. Now, interesting. It says approval, legal compliance, 1 vote per voter. I thought they passed that hurdle because it is being used in Fargo. So unless nobody's challenged it on constitutional grounds, maybe that's the case. I really don't follow the approval voting that much because I cast my lot in with RCV. Alrighty, so that's all I have for you today. I'm going to do one more check to see if there's any comments I need to deal with, and otherwise we will be going, oh, I got a really nice comment, so I got to put there. So thank you, Ben. Yeah, and that's the goal of this, to be interactive and informational. You know, y'all might not always agree with me, but you'll learn something, hopefully. And yeah, this is something that I am very, very passionate about. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a good night. And remember, I'm not going to put it on the screen again, but if you find value in what I'm doing and you are able to, I understand not everyone is, I really would appreciate it if you would become a patron of this show, which is at patreon.com, Pink Flame of Liberty. And I had several over the weekend, and oh my God, I was so happy about that because it's validation, you know, and there's ain't no such thing as a free lunch, right? Sooner or later, if I don't get sufficient support, I'm not going to be able to, I'm going to burn out. I'm not going to be able to do this unless I can cut back on some other things. And I can only cut back on my job if I at least get some income in through this. Otherwise, you know, I'm giving it a couple years and we'll see how it goes. You know how it goes. You're libertarians. So anyway, I hope you have a good night, and maybe tomorrow we'll be back with some history. I'm not sure. I at least try to get out a couple videos a week, though I've been doing 3 or 4 lately, but that's a breakneck speed. So I love you all, and I will see you soon.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians, or choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business, not because they want to